Today we're diving into a really powerful idea, something that explains why new money in the economy doesn't hit everyone the same way. It's called the Cantillon effect, and it gets to the heart of a huge question. When new money gets created, who's really winning?
You know, we hear about governments or central banks printing money all the time. But have you ever stopped to think about who actually gets their hands on it first? I mean, who are the very first people to touch that new cash? Turns out, the answer has way bigger consequences than you might think.
So the classic idea is that new money is like a rising tide that lifts all the boats. But that's not quite right. A better way to think about it is like a single stone dropped into a quiet pond. The splash is biggest right at the center, and those ripples get weaker and weaker the further out they go. Where you are in that pond, well, that changes everything.
And that brings us to the main event, the Cantillon effect. It's named after an economist from the 18th century, Richard Cantillon, and it basically says that injecting new money into the economy is never a neutral act. It automatically creates winners and losers, and it all depends on who gets that money first, before prices have had a chance to catch up.
Okay, so to really see how this all works, let's follow a brand new dollar on its journey. We're going to trace that money ripple from the moment it's created all the way to the very edges of the economic pond.
So check out the path this new money takes. It all starts at a central bank, sure, but it doesn't just magically appear in everyone's account. No, its first stop is the big banks in major financial institutions. And what do they do with it? They start buying assets, stocks, real estate, you name it. Only after all of that happens does the money begin to slowly, and I mean slowly, trickle down into the rest of the economy through things like salaries and day-to-day spending.
This gets us to what you might call the first-in-line advantage. Let's zoom in on that inner circle for a second. The folks standing right where that stone hits the water. What exactly makes their position so powerful?
So who are these first receivers? Well, we're talking about large banks, big corporations, major government contractors. And their advantage is actually pretty simple, but it is profound. They get to spend all that new money at today's prices, before their own spending starts driving those very prices up for everybody else.
Let me give you a quick example. Let's say they take that new money and pour it into buying up real estate. All of that buying pressure drives up demand, and suddenly prices jump, let's say by 15%. They got in at the old price, and now they're holding an asset that's already worth more. They've basically captured that gain almost instantly.
All right, now let's go to the other side of the pond, the outer edge of that ripple. What's it like for the people who are feeling the inflation lag? The ones who only get that money after prices have already shifted? Well, it is a completely different story. And here's where you really see the two experiences side by side. The first receivers, they get the money when its purchasing power at its absolute highest. They can buy assets cheap. But by the time that same money makes its way down to someone as, say, a pay raise, the prices for everyday things, housing, food, gas, have already been pushed higher. That pay raise just doesn't stretch as far. In real terms, their purchasing power has actually gone down.
Over time, this creates a pretty stark picture. The new money floods into assets first, causing their prices to shoot up, that's our tall bar, but wages, which are at the very end of this chain, they climb much more slowly. So what happens? You get a widening gap between people who own assets and people who earn wages.
This quote from our source material just nails it, really. It says, "Newly printed money flows to the wealthy first, allowing them to buy assets before prices inflate for everyone else." It's a perfect summary, right? The sequence is everything. The benefit is created right there at the source.
So, we followed the ripple from the very center all the way out to the edge. Let's wrap this up by talking about why that starting point, the source of the money, matters so much. What's the big takeaway here?
If there's one thing to remember, it's this: not all dollars are equal. A dollar in the hands of someone who gets it first is worth a lot more than that exact same dollar by the time it reaches someone at the end of the line. Its value literally goes down as it moves through the economy.
And that leaves us with a really big question to chew on. If the very structure of our financial system means new money always benefits those who are closest to it, what does that really mean for our idea of economic fairness? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.